Hey everybody, I just want to talk to you about figuring out which calculator to use for algebra. That's one of the first questions that comes up when you start to take algebra, and so I googled it just to see what Google tells the world is like the best calculator for algebra, and the snippet that comes up at the top is for a graphing calculator. And it even says in the snippet that it's great for middle school and high school, and that is wrong. That is completely wrong, and that is by somebody, I guess, who wants you to click on their link and they can get paid for a lot. They'll get paid a lot more if you buy this graphing calculator that's over $100 than if you buy the calculator that you really need that's like $20, sometimes even less. And so that's really frustrating to me as a teacher, and so I think you should know that. So, let me talk about why you don't want a graphing calculator, especially if you feel like you're not good at math. The graphing calculator is going to have things on there that you just don't need, so it's like you're having to ignore many things on there because you're only going to use a very limited amount of them for all of Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. Like even in college algebra, you will be fine with this one. So it will serve you well for a long time. But it's also, if you feel like you're not good at math, it's also going to make it more confusing because of the way that it does fractions, the way that it does radicals, that kind of thing. So when you type in a fraction, and a lot of the scientific calculators have a fraction button, but this calculator actually shows it to you as a fraction with a number on top and a line and number on the bottom, just like you would write it. And so that makes it just visually just so much easier to process. Okay, that's saying 2/3 or whatever, other than 2 and then this little funky symbol and a 3. That's just not what we're used to seeing at all when we think fractions. If you feel like you're bad at math, don't let the calculator make it worse for you. Pick a calculator that's going to make it easier. So the one I suggest is the TI-30XS Multi-View. And those numbers and letters and multi-view, that's really important because it's TI, Texas Instruments, so you know it's a really good company, you know that part's good. But they have a lot of models. They have a lot of versions. They even have like a professional version of this that I don't really recommend. I've not used it very much, but I don't. It's just not necessary. It costs a little bit more. It's not necessary. So 30XS and multi-view. You need all of those pieces. Don't get the 34 multi-view. Don't, all that stuff. Alright, so let me talk about a couple of things. I talked about the fractions. If you have a regular calculator sitting around that has that square root symbol, type in square root of 18 and see what it gives you. Or square root of 12, or square root of 5 even. When you type that in and hit enter or equals or whatever, you're going to see this long decimal on almost any calculator that you use, including the graphing calculators, which is fine, except that for Algebra 1 and Geometry, most of Geometry, not all of it, and Algebra 2, you don't need that decimal form. You need that radical, that square root, to be in square root form still. And those calculators won't show that to you, which just makes you have to do this extra step that, while it's good to know how to do that step, it's a complete, it takes a good bit of time. It's just more complicated, more time that is not really the point of whatever you're studying at that point, that you don't need to spend on that other process. So if you type in square root of 18 here, it's going to tell you that that's 3 square root of 2, which is the exact answer, which is what you would need to know. So I'm just saying, the other calculators don't give it to you. They give you the decimal. So, in case you're wondering, sometimes you do need the decimal, and so this calculator also has a button for that. So once you get that 3 square root of 2, it's got this little toggle button, it's just these arrows. on it that toggles it from the radical version to the decimal version, or even if you're just in a fraction, it'll change it from a fraction to a decimal, and you hit it again, it flips it back. So it's great if you're doing some process where you have to use that square root version, but in your mind you're thinking, I know my answer's supposed to be less than 5, I'm not sure what that square root is. You can hit the toggle button, see the decimal, and be like, okay, I'm on track here. This number's less than 5. Let me go back to the square root. That's what I'm going to use for the rest of this problem. So it's ideal for all of that. I mean, those reasons alone are great. There's some good stats and table functions here that are useful too. It's got the trig function, so when you get into geometry and do sine and cosine and tangent ratios, that's all there for you. So it's all good. It's great. It's the one that I've used with my students for more than 10 years. Be sure you use the right model. TI-30XS Multiview. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you felt like this was helpful to you, because there's more to come. Thanks. Bye.